Welcome back to another edition of Knickerbocker Banter. I'm your host, Harris Wishard, and today we have a very special guest of ESPN radio, great friend of mine, Freddie Coleman, joined the program. What's up, brother?
I'm good, brother Harris. How's everything with you with our New York Knicks up 2-1 against the Detroit Pistons?
Relief, I want to say, but know that I'm not out of the woods. And for the second straight year, right? I mean, you hear so many comparisons to what the situation was like. No, that the Knicks aren't going to make anything easy for us.
Sure.
Just obviously that feeling of relief, but a lot of work still to be done as Detroit not making this easy on them.
Yeah, playoff basketball is never easy. I don't care if you are the New York Knicks. I don't care if you are the Oklahoma City Thunder. Anytime you're involving yourself in the playoffs, it's not as if you can look in that and say, hey, a one and done situation on any given night. A team can be beaten. That's the NCAA tournament. That's high school basketball. In the NBA, usually the teams that are the best, teams that execute the best, or the teams that are coached the best are going to win 4 times in a 7-game series. But that doesn't mean that it's going to be easy, because any championship journey is going to be as hard as possible, because playoff basketball, just like playoff hockey, it is a grind. It tests your mental, it tests your physical, it tests your spirit, and only the strong will survive. And so far through the first couple of games of any kind of playoff series, we've been able to see so far, Harris, we've seen the strong survive, no matter somebody has had big lead in the series or just barely have a 1-game lead in the series.
Absolutely. Talk about the edge, right? And I don't know if you've noticed, there definitely is some chippiness going around the NBA right now, especially with this series. And we knew the word physical was coming up a lot, and the word soft has been used to describe, not only, I mean, Towns has had that narrative. I like the way he played a lot in game three, but a lot of people have said, oh, they don't have that. Whenever they had that formula last year, they don't have.
Yeah.
And I think through the first 3 games, although it always hasn't been pretty, I don't see this team really necessarily getting pushed around. What have you noticed about what's going on out there and how the refs have tried, or lack of their effort not trying to hold this together? But what have you noticed about the level of intensity right now?
Well, the intensity you knew was going to be ratcheted up, because that's what Detroit brought into this series
Mm.
by winning 3-1 in the regular season against the New York Knicks. And they put it out there that they're going to be the new bad boys, the new Detroit Pistons bad boys when it comes to the NBA. Invariably, if you're a referee in this series officiating these games, you know that these are two physical basketball teams, and you're not going to try to take the identity away, because that's how the Pistons were able to go from 14 wins last year to 44 wins this year. And now the New York Knicks in back-to-back seasons have won at least 50 games in the regular season. So I give the referees a lot of credit that they have not tried to control the game, especially the game have not gotten out of hand, no matter which game it has been. And we've seen that become a very prevalent theme throughout each and every NBA playoff series, because it usually, what we've been told in modern times, they're going to let clutching and grabbing not be a part of NBA playoff basketball. But we've also seen teams be physical and teams not getting punished for that, because I think a lot of people try to associate clutch and grab with physical basketball. Uh-uh. You go look at the history of the NBA. The Boston Celtics in the 80s were not a clutch and grab team, but they were a very physical team on defense. The Los Angeles Lakers were a team that got up and down the basketball floor, but they were a very physical team on offense and a very physical team on defense. You can have those things in basketball, no matter if you played in the 1970s, Harris, or in the 2010s, 2020s, and you can do that and be rewarded for being physical and being aggressive, but not going past that line.
Yeah, absolutely. I just think there's a notion that in today's NBA, there's things that are going on that are no longer allowed, right? You just mentioned some of the eras, and people want to see. I've just made the argument of there being a happy medium between. We don't need to see WWE. I think there are guys that may be going over the top sometimes. Isaiah Stewart's been missing the last couple games. We know what kind of energy he brings to the table. So I definitely think we don't need to go out there and fight. I don't mind some pushing and shoving, like Cat sticking up for his teammate the other night. I'm not looking for guys to throw haymakers, but I think it's just been blown a little bit out of proportion that this Nick team doesn't have that, and that's what's going to hold them back. I think definitely some of that going on, and I think they have enough of that to win playoff games.
Exactly, because even though the dynamics have changed, because you don't have Julius Randle Isaiah Hartenstein as well as Dante DiVincenzo, if the Knicks would have had their way, they'd have kept Isaiah Hartenstein, but because
Mhm.
of finances in the NBA, they couldn't afford to, and they were not telling him, "Don't take that contract and give us the hometown discount." They knew that contract was gonna be out there for him, and they wished him nothing but the best because if they could have kept him, they would have. But when you have these kind of players and you brought these players in so the Knicks would not fall short in games like this, and that's why Karl Anthony Towns, what he had the other night in that Game 3 victory, how Mikal Bridges was able to play in that Game 3 victory. It's not all going to be on Jalen Brunson, but you can be a very physical and very tough-minded basketball player and still be an effective basketball player. And you saw a game like that on Thursday, that if that game had happened in the late 1990s or the early 2000s, Harris,
Mhm.
that final score would have been like 77, 75, maybe 81 to 78. That would not have been aesthetically pleasing basketball.
Mhm.
That was an aesthetically pleasing game that got past 100
Mhm.
involving both of those basketball teams. And that's why the NBA playoffs have been so compelling, no matter what series you've been able to watch, because they're allowing guys to play basketball, but it doesn't turn into Street Fighter video game part 38. That has not been the case so far in the NBA playoffs.
Well, you nailed it. And around the All-Star break, there was a narrative going around that the NBA has lost some fans. You remember guys gotten on ESPN talking about what
Yeah.
the NHL did and how beneficial that was. Me, I'm a basketball junkie. You love hoops. You're going to tune in. It's part of your job as well. But even if it wasn't, I'm sure you'd still be tuning into the playoffs. I saw a number. I think it was the best watched weekend the last 25 years. So it's definitely been entertaining. And like I've said, that edge that people want to see usually gets cranked up playoff time anyway. But I do think the product over the first few games of this first round has been a good one.
Yeah, you know why? Because the stars have shown up. No matter what playoff series you're watching, you're seeing big time performances from your stars on your basketball team. And I got the whole narrative when they tried to use the NHL and what they had the Four Nations Cup against the NBA All-Star game. Well, the NBA All-Star game is not going to rate anymore because guys are not going to go there and play to the fullest and get injured. That's just not going to happen. And the minute that we can reconcile that, then the All-Star game is going to be what you bring to it, not what the All-Star game is going to bring to you. But I never fell for that, to use the line from the movie, Beverly Hills Cop. I didn't fall for the banana in the tailpipe because I know the NBA has always been that whatever whipping boy or whipping league for a lot of people out there that either want basketball the way that they want it or want basketball back the way that they used to watch it. We always want everything to adapt to the circumstances. The NFL has done that. The NHL has done that. Major League Baseball has done that. The NBA has done that, and people seem to be bothered by that because the NBA said we do not want the beauty of our game to develop into a kind of pushing and shoving match because that's not what people want to watch. So they're allowing more scoring to happen. They're going to punish defenses by saying you're not going to be able to go out there and think it's like a Rucker Park League basketball game in the summertime where everything goes. That's not what we want our game to be. So the fact that we've had that kind of narrative shift because the Stars have played the way we've seen the Stars have been able to play. What Anthony Edwards has done for the Minnesota Timberwolves, what Kawhi Leonard has done for the Los Angeles Clippers. For my money, he's been the best player so far in the first round of the NBA playoff series in the first round of those series. I think the second best player has been Jalen Brunson of the New York Knicks, averaging over 35 points a game. When you have your stars show up, and especially Luka Doncic being in Los Angeles, when that happens, people are going to tune in. They have a factor that the NHL does not have. The NHL has superstars, but not enough where you say outside Alex Ovechkin of the Washington Capitals or maybe Connor McDavid of the Edmonton Oilers, they don't have that one person you want to see. If Luka's on TV, you want to see him play. Kawhi playing that way, you want to see him play. Jalen Brunson, you want to see him play. LeBron James, Anthony Edwards, Steph Curry, Jimmy Butler before he got injured. When guys are showing up like that, it brings people to the table because they want to have a conversation about what they were able to see so far in the first round of the playoffs.
Definitely, some of my hockey friends are gonna be glad that the NHL made its way into a Knicks, podcast here today. Look, they know I'm not the biggest NHL fan, but I wanna talk about Towns because to me, I don't know if you can call him an X factor. I had Eamon McEnany of SNY on here. We said, "Who's the X factor?" He said, "Well, I don't know if the Knicks have too many because we kinda know what we're gonna get from people or we know what we have to get from people."
Sure.
Me, I mean, it's pretty eminent that when Towns plays well, or at least as aggressive as he is the other night, that's where he'll have to be for the Knicks to reach their ceiling. And we cannot have those nights that we had on Monday when he was non-existent in the second half. The Knicks usually make a conscious effort the game after that. Do you expect to see more of that consistently? And what did you see on Thursday that's going to bode well for the Knicks going forward if they're going to have to make a deep run in this playoff?
Well, personally, I thought Karl Anthony Towns got kind of a bad rap during that game two and after game two because of your Tom Thibodeau. You got to give him the ball in better positions. I thought Tom Thibodeau became what he normally is, a creature of habit.
Mm.
That when things got gummy and things got sticky, he went to Brunson pounding, 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 pounding the basketball, trying to make a play. And I'm watching that game, Harris, and I said, well, then why did you bring Karl Anthony Towns and Mikal Bridges? They were brought here to reduce that kind of pressure on Jalen Brunson and OG Anunoby. And I thought that Tom Thibodeau did not do anybody any favors. What do we see in game three? They went to him early, late, and often because Detroit has let it be known they don't want to risk their big men getting in foul trouble against Karl Anthony Towns. So Tobias Harris is going to be that sacrificial lamb where he has to be able to try to wall them off as best as he can. They don't have anybody, in my opinion, in this series that can guard him. But if I'm the Detroit Pistons, you got Duran for a reason who can match it with him height-wise. You got to just take your chance and hope that he doesn't put enough fouls on him from Karl Anthony Towns' perspective. And if you're Tom Thibodeau, you know you have that kind of advantage. You continue to use that advantage. They involved him more in the pick and roll, but they also put him on the low block a couple of times, and they got that cross match late in the game where all of a sudden Schroeder is on him, Dennis Schroeder, and Karl Anthony Towns did not shoot a fadeaway. He didn't try to do anything different. He just was able to back him down just enough and not try to have an offensive foul being drawn against him. Then he knocked down a shot 8 feet away on the baseline. That's money in the bank for him. Tom Thibodeau did a much better job putting him in positions where he could get the basketball and make those kind of plays. And when he was hitting the three early, where he hit 3 threes in that first quarter, all of a sudden the defense said, well, he's hot from three, you got to take that away. And I thought he did a great job getting those paint touches by using the ball, by putting it on the deck. And then they a couple of times got him in a low block where he had that kind of success. I would not go away from that if I'm Tom Thibodeau because Detroit has shown they don't have anybody that can literally stop him, no matter if it's on the inside or on the outside as well.
Yeah, definitely. And we had a show last year in the postseason where I think you may have referenced it was Jalen Brunson and the Family Band or something. Future. The Knicks have another lead singer here, and he might not be to the quality or the clutch factor, although Towns did make some big shots the other night. That's he's going to have to be a big part of this. There's no way around that. And I do put some of that on Tibbs. I agree with you, but his mentality of I got to dominate this basketball game. I got to make these opportunities. We talk about maybe going into the pick and roll. You made a great point about, it's Tobias Harris guarding him. I got to be assertive. I got to dominate. I do think part of that is coaching, but his mentality of I got to get my shots no matter what. I got to maybe communicate that within Brunson and Brunson taking accountability after game two. That's what I felt good about going into game three. And I've always felt good as long as the Knicks are healthy. To me, there's always been a response here. I do think they were depleted. I don't want to make excuses about last season, but I feel good about the locker room. Although, and leading me to my next point, I want to ask you about this. Thibs' job security is a hot topic in New York right now. And go ahead.
Yeah, it shouldn't be a hot topic in my opinion, because Tom Thibodeau has been a really good coach for the New York Knicks. I know there are plenty of things that he does that will rub people the wrong way. For example, playing his players too much in the regular season, but then you look at the numbers, he doesn't play his starters exponentially more than anybody else in the NBA. It's not his fault that his guys stay relatively healthy. And he's like, when you're relatively healthy, what do you get paid to do? You get paid to play basketball. That's how that goes. It's not Tom Thibodeau's fault that he has a lot of trust in his guys, that he wants them out there. Now, I think at times when a game is no longer in doubt, one way or the other, you can sit your guys. I go back to a game against the Utah Jazz where they're winning that game by 100 points, and he still has his starters in the ball game with 2.5 minutes to play. I'm like, dude, that's how Derrick Rose got injured when you coached in Chicago and game one of that playoff series against the Philadelphia 76ers. So at times he can be very, very bullheaded and very, very stubborn. But that's not to say that his way has not worked for the New York Knicks, where we weren't looking at this team as a contending basketball team before they got Jalen Brunson, and then they were able to put those kind of pieces around him. The reason that a lot of people want to use his job status or job security as a hot topic because there's a certain guy out there called Michael Malone who's no longer coaching in the NBA, the ex-coach of the Denver Nuggets. It's very easy to say, well, the Knicks are good with Tom Thibodeau, but Michael Malone's won a championship. They could be better with him. We don't know how that chemistry experiment would work. Not saying it wouldn't work because I think Michael Malone is a terrific basketball coach. I don't know what kind of One Direction Justin Bieber situation happened in Denver where he lost his job, but that guy's not going to be on the street for long because he's that good of a coach. But because you have a guy out there, a guy who's the coach in the Knicks organization, and Tom Thibodeau takes a lot of slights from people in and outside of the media. That's why a lot of people want to say, hey, if they get blown out in the first round, they lose in the first round to the Detroit Pistons, should the Knicks think about making a coaching change? I think that would be the wrong move. Now, if it gets to a point where you can't get past the second round or you can't get to the NBA Finals, then you may have to think about that. But this is not the time to do that regarding Tom Thibodeau.
Yeah, I've gotten a lot of messages regarding the comparison of, is Tom Thibodeau similar to what Mark Jackson was in Golden State? That's what everybody wants to talk about. Do the Knicks reach a certain ceiling with Thibs? And obviously that noise was very loud after game 2. Freddie, you know the New York media, right? You
Yeah.
know how it's gonna be. It's difficult here, it's cutthroat here, it's on a game-to-game basis. The Knicks go out and win by 20 in game 4, and then they close the series out in 5. Everyone say, "Oh, great adjustments. He did this, he did that." So, listen, if they did not get past this series, I personally think, not say I agree with it or not, but I do think there would be changes that would be made. That's just how I feel about it. If you got to the second round and you competed with Boston, and then maybe they would go forward and and deal with that in the offseason and see. But to avoid disaster and avoid maybe me flooding the country because I have to turn my phone off, just go into a quiet place if they didn't win this first round. But um, I definitely think sometimes, and I'm not, neither of us are NBA coaches, and all the people I talk to aren't. But you mentioned the word stubborn. Get your guys out when you're up 25 with 3 minutes. But he's done more good than bad here. Same thing I said about Randall. If there's somebody else out there that you think fits what you're trying to do, then so be it. But I don't like to just get rid of people for the sake of getting rid of people.
Yeah, that's never made any sense to me at all, to Harris, because it's very easy that if people have the kind of expectations and if they don't believe you're meeting those expectations, then invariably, okay, get rid of that person. Bring somebody else in here. You can't just put that out there if you don't have somebody that you believe is going to be better. I'm sure Mike Tomlin hears that nonsense all the time as a Pittsburgh Steelers head coach. And I can't tell you how many times Steelers fans hit me on social media and they talk about Tomlin's got to go, Tomlin's got to go. And I couldn't resist because we got a caller into my radio show on that one time. I said, fine. Who are you going to get to replace him? He goes, well, Andy Reid. I said, right. Andy Reid's going to be Patrick Mahomes to go take the place of Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh. I said, do you realize how idiotic that sounds? Andy Reid's going to look at the Pittsburgh Steelers and say, let me save you and lead the greatest quarterback of this generation
Mm.
just to help you out. Wait, well, bring up an assistant coach. I said, okay, give me one. Name one. If you can't name one, then you lose me with that argument. But because that guy is out there, like a Michael Malone, it's very easy to say, oh, that guy won the championship, Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray for the Denver Nuggets, and everything was right in their favor. They're able to win that championship with him being out there with that kind of pedigree. That's why people can get a little bit scared of saying maybe Tom Thibodeau is not the long-term answer. Well, let's let it play out because they're 2-1 in the series against the Detroit Pistons. If they're able to win that series, more than likely they're going to face the Boston Celtics, even though the Celtics lost last night to the Orlando Magic, and it has not looked good for the Knicks when they played the Boston Celtics in the regular season. But what if Tom Thibodeau and the Knicks beat the Boston Celtics in the second round? Then what is that conversation going to sound like? So at a certain point, you got to see exactly what is the progression, if there is a progression. And we've seen that progression get a little bit better each and every year. And whatever the Knicks have needed to go after, who to go after, they've been able to do that. They need a tough-minded defender. They trade for OG Anunoby. They wanted to reduce the pressure scoring-wise on Jalen Brunson, so they swing that trade for Karl Anthony Towns and Mikal Bridges. It's not as if the Knicks are not doing anything to try to win a championship or get close to the NBA Finals. And I think as of right now, the guy that's best suited to try to get them there as a head coach is Tom Thibodeau.
It's been a great pleasure, as I just said, and we'll look forward to catch up with you soon. The great Freddie Coleman of ESPN Radio. Talk to you soon, brother.
Always a pleasure, my man. Let's do it sooner than soon, especially the next day in the playoffs. Let's not make this a one-time thing during this playoff run. Hopefully, that could be a long playoff run for our New York Knicks.
From your mouth to God's ears, brother. You're the best.
You too, Harris. Thank you. Thank you, my man.